anytime you got all these secret societies, you got to understand that these people are out here in many different positions to deceive. They have blogs, they have radio stations, they have TV shows on the internet radio, books, they are professors, teachers, scientists, or what have you, Masons. Where do you think these people go back to when they leave these Masonic lodges, and they go back into their positions? Judges, doctors, lawyers. So I always tell people, when you believe certain things, especially like the Bible, the Hebrews who want to believe that we curse and all this stuff like that, when you start getting into this stuff, it is pushing us further away from who we truly are and not getting into the real truth about our history. So now, as I said before, to me, the key to all this, dinosaurs, dragons, the Bible. And when you start to really get into understanding these things, it starts to point itself out. The truth starts to slowly, because you have to start from the beginning. You got to go back. And that's the thing. They want to talk about, they tell us 65 million years ago, dinosaurs exist. And they went extinct before man came into being. But we found too much proof, too much evidence of humans and dinosaurs coexisting on this planet. And the Bible talks about this, when you understand, which we'll get into. And there's too much. It's just so much that you cannot ignore, especially the imagery and the rituals and the celebrations that go on that is surrounding dinosaurs, or surrounding dragons, I should say, which we know, as I said before, they were called dragons, not dinosaurs. Dinosaurs is a later name, 19th century. So they can't ignore this stuff. Got to look at it. We got to pay attention to what this stuff is really talking about and how deep it is. And it's deep, as you'll see. So we have the ancients, so many depictions and drawings of dinosaurs, proving that they must have coexisted, because no way they could draw these dinosaurs if they didn't see them. You have all the stories from, the Sumerian culture, the ancient Egyptians, even the Asians talking about these dragons, all these mythologies and stories everywhere, stuff that we can't ignore. So even if we want to go by the whole Sumerian story about this reptilian race, altering the DNA of man, that is implying that, man was already here. It's the same thing with the Bible. The Bible already basically implying that our DNA, or man, was fabricated, and that, there was a man, or a perfect man, before us at one point. Before what we know today as man, there was a perfect man that was altered to create what we have today. And it's also symbolized by the fall of man. Man was perfect, then it was the fall of man, and then we get what we have today. So again, you can't ignore this stuff. You got to put it together, and the pieces fit in very, very unbelievable ways when you start to pay attention. So now, Adam and Eve in the garden is representing perfect man. Man as it was at some point, until the serpent came and changed that. Now, as I said, it's a lot of different things we can get from the Garden of Eden story. Now, we know for a fact, 100%, dinosaurs existed and they ruled on this planet. Is it far-fetched to believe that there could be, or could have been, a reptilian race similar to us during that time? No, it's not far-fetched to think that. It's something that we really have to entertain and think about, because there's too much going on here with this dinosaur, or this reptilian reference. So when you begin to understand, we see that the Adam and Eve in the garden representing perfect man, the serpent is representing the reptilian who came and changed man into what we are today, came and altered man. So when you look at the story, this is exactly what it's telling us. You had perfect man representing something different, until the serpent came, or reptilian came, and changed that. It's going to make a lot of sense later. Came and changed that whole thing. And the Bible talks about, all the creeping things and all the animals and everything that was created before man, and that fits, with evolution theory. But, when we take a look at this whole, reptilian thing and begin to understand how we fit in with it, in evolution, you had reptilians, mammals, and birds were the last three to basically evolve on the evolutionary scale, on the chart. So we know, they tell us that humans and primates share a common ancestor. Well, birds also share that common ancestor with us. And it's, weird to see that the last three, humans or mammals, reptilians, and birds, share this common ancestor. So we know that you have this whole missing link. And you have the fact that this common ancestor basically is the missing link. And that if we understood what this common ancestor was, we will be able to figure out, where we came from. So if you look at the evolutionary chart, this whole common ancestor should fit here on the chart. And it should come right after the reptilians, the reptiles. So now the thing is, you had, as I talked about before, the whole green anole had its genome sequenced. And it says here, the green anole genome contains approximately 17,500 protein coding genes. Of those genes, 4,000 are also found in humans, mouse, dog, possums, platypus, chicken, zebrafinch, and pufferfish. So we see we got that connection. Now, and again, as I said, the last three to evolve, mammals, birds, and reptiles. It says here, it turns out, and it appears, mammal hair, bird feathers, and reptile scales all share common ancestry. So now, human skin, mammal hair, bird feathers, reptilian skin, all same common ancestor. This is why you see people that have that rare skin disease where they grow scales. This is why we see people that are extra hairy. You have some people just grow way more hair, than others. And we share this common ancestor. Now, this is one of the things that, in my research, and probably some of yours as well, one of the things that basically had me stuck for a while is, again, they tell us that we did not evolve from primates. We didn't come from them, but we share a common ancestor that they can't tell us, what that is. Now, the whole thing is this. When you look at chimps, when you look at monkeys, you can't deny the similarities. I mean, you just can't. Look at the hands, look like ours, teeth, eyes. It is clearly that, it's clear that we basically are in the same, genetic code, or, we share that same common ancestor. That is something to me that is clear. Obviously, we didn't evolve from them because we don't see primates turning into humans. So what it looks like when you begin to understand this whole thing is whatever our common ancestor was, it must have had two different evolutionary paths. One different from the evolution that the primates made, and then one for humans. Because you have the fact that you have this missing link, whatever it is, that basically created these primates, and they went their path, which stops. And then we have ours being as though we didn't come from them. So we took another direction from this common ancestor, and we went another way as far as our evolution. But they basically they took traits from the primates and put it with us and gave us some of these traits and these genes or what have you to further our evolution. So we're clearly different. When you look at primates, they have 48 chromosomes. We have 46. And the first two of our chromosomes are fused together. So that shows you right there, we're talking about genetic manipulation. We have 64 codons. Now, of the 64 codons, only 22 are active, or are basically encoded with the universal genetic code, that we carry. So these 20 that are basically active in producing this genetic code are basically, gives us amino acids. So we understand how important amino acids are. It says here the role of amino acids goes beyond building blocks. They are essential for the synthesis of proteins, enzymes, hormones, neurotransmitters, metabolic pathways, mental stabilization, and just about every function that takes place within the human body. So when you think about that, and you think about having 64 codons that's supposed to, produce these amino acids, that's basically going to give us these different functions. And we only have 20 that's giving us these functions. So the understanding is if all 64 of the codons was produced in amino acids, we would have way more functions from the body. We'd be able to do a lot more than what we do today. We'll be different genetically. We'll be different humans. but we only have certain ones that work. So again, you have, the fact that we have all these codons. It's like, why give us this? You understand what I'm saying? Why give us this? It's the same thing with the brain. Why do we have all these things that we're only using some? That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's like, having a car, but you pushing it. Yeah, it got 4 wheels that'll help it roll. You can put it in neutral to make it easier. You can beep the horn. You can put somebody in it, to steer it. But, why do all that and not just have the car function correctly and just drive the car, instead of pushing it around? So for us to have all these components that's supposed to do so many different things, and a lot of them we have no clue what that is, they're shut off, shut off. So now when we look at these chimpanzees and these great apes, their bones are different than us. Their nature is, of course, different. Their bones are thicker than ours. They're able to take way more, pressure or trauma to the body than we can. If we had to go one-on-one with an ape or, a chimp, they kill us. They rip our hand off. So it's a lot that we can look at and see that, if you're going to sort of create something better, because seemingly what it looks like, if they was going one way with the primates and they decided to scrap that and go a different way, which we're going to talk about in a second, but we're weaker. It's like we are weaker, but, more intelligent. But we don't really truly understand the real nature of these primates, and it gets much deeper than that. So it says here, another as yet unexplained phenomenon the sequencing revealed has to do with the lumps of DNA known as centromeres, which hold together the 2 separate strands of DNA that make up chromosome, acting somewhat like the center of an X. Strangely, 9 of the 22 centromeres the monkeys have repositioned themselves on their chromosomes in the last 25 million years. As to why this happened, no one knows, said the researcher Mariano Rocci at the University of Bari in Italy. The rhesus monkey genome sequence should prove invaluable to biomedical research, and physician scientist Ajit Varki at the University of California at San Diego, who participated in the chimpanzee genome sequencing project. And if we can get the genome sequences of one representative from each primate lineage, we could reconstitute the ancestral primate genome, what the genome of our common ancestors some 40 to 50 million years ago looked like. He told Life Science that would be an amazing feat. So what does this mean? What is this saying here? It's saying that the primates we know of today, not only us, but they as well, had their DNA altered. He's saying that if they could do the sequencing of one of each of the ancestral primates, follow their lineage back and do a genome sequencing of each one in each lineage, they could probably get what, the primates must have looked like before this whole change. Now, as he said, they had their chromosomes repositioned, and they don't know how that happened or why that happened, which that would, of course, change their nature, change their appearance as well. And it's amazing. So these monkeys we have walking around today, look completely different, were completely different. And that probably was done, to probably confuse them, or probably to, for them thinking ahead later, it will be tougher for you to understand exactly who that common ancestor was if they were left alone. So by them having this mix up with the chromosomes, and then now them having to basically try to go back, and we're talking about, you have primates that's extinct, and ones that that existed that we probably don't know ever existed on top of that. So it might be impossible to do a sequencing of all of them from every lineage to figure out what it looked like or what that common ancestor must have been. So now that's crazy. We have absolutely no clue what the primates are, but we study them and we know they are unique. They are definitely related to us. It's clear to see when you look at them. For all we know, they could have looked like this. They could have looked like Planet of the Apes. They could have been walking around, talking, and had intelligence. We don't know. It seems as if this common ancestor, whoever created them first. And they were a certain way. And they were going in that direction. And then all of a sudden, they were altered. their evolution was stopped and they were changed into what we know, as primates today, what we see them as today. And then they stopped there and went with us and took some of the genetic code and genes from them, and placed them to us and started with us, like as if they were starting something different. This is why, they say, the scientists always say that we didn't evolve from primates, but we share a common ancestor, because clearly they was first and their evolution was stopped and it was changed. And then they began to create us. It's one of the weirdest things, that you look at when you see this whole thing. It's one of the things that had me puzzled for a while. I had to really dig into it and pull that out and say, you know what, that has to be what happened. But the proof is right there when you look at the fact that, their genetics, their code was altered and we have no clue. Everything you're going to see when I'm getting into this stuff is showing you tampering. They're not saying, and they're clear on this, they're not saying that it was a mutation or something happened in nature. They're saying, I don't know. Every time you go and you look, I don't know. They say it clearly. We don't know what happened, because you can't put it on the mutation. This is why I stick with the whole mutation from black to white, because that's clear. We can prove that, which Dr. Keith Chang did. We can find the mutation. In these cases, they don't know what happened. It's something was done to alter that path and to change them into what we see today. So now let's go to the garden. Let's look at Genesis 3:14. It says here, and the Lord God said unto the serpent, because thou done this, thou art cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and thus shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. Now, we probably read that 1,000 times. A lot of people read that verse and we just read it. And it's subtle clues, in the Bible to always talk about. You got to pay attention to the wording and how they say things. So when it's talking about this serpent that's supposed to be, in the garden, it says, cursed him on his belly. Meaning what? If it's a snake, we assume it's already on its belly, right? It's a serpent. It's supposed to already be on its belly. But he's saying, no, I curse you on your belly. Meaning what? It couldn't have been a snake in the garden. See, these depictions, they make these depictions to fool you. Plain and simple. It wasn't a serpent in the garden. It was a dragon in the garden. And when you pay attention to so many different things, we won't get into this. It's clear as day what they're trying to say and what they're trying to allude to with the snake being the reptilian. It's a dragon in the garden, a serpent dragon, not a serpent, which is why when he say, I'm going to curse you on your belly, meaning those arms, it's going to be gone, that we see with these serpent dragons. Now that always had us confused anyway, because the serpent speaking and snakes don't talk today. Now we don't know what these dragons were, what they were able to do when they existed. But when you go through the mythologies and the stories, they could talk. It was the weirdest thing. They can talk. And, it's something that you can't ignore. Now, when you look at in the Bible, them basically giving us dragons in the Bible, which we'll get into this. You have to really pay attention to what it's talking about. So it says here, Isaiah 27:1, in that day, the Lord with his sore and great and strong sword shall punish Leviathan, the piercing serpent, even Leviathan, that crooked serpent, and he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. So it's giving you that comparison to serpent dragons. So now we go to Job 41. Remember, in Job 41, you have the story where God is basically, cussing out Job for talking back to him. He's basically saying like, how you talking back to me? You don't got no fear of me, but you scared of all these beasts on the planet and all these tigers and dragons or what have you, and these things that he named in the story. He's saying you scared of these things, but how you ain't scared of me? And I'm the one who made them. So here in Job 41, it's saying, canst thou draw out Leviathan with a hook, or his tongue with a cord which thou lettest down? Canst thou put an hook into his nose, or bore his jaw through with a thorn? Will he make many supplications unto thee? Will he speak soft words unto thee? Will he make a covenant with thee? Wilt thou take him for a servant forever? So it's saying, can you do this stuff? Can you do this with the Leviathan? You know, the Leviathan is big beast. You won't do this one. You can't catch it with a hook. You can't do this because, you know, you're scared of it. It'll kill you. But, you know, you take that type of direction with Leviathan, but yet, you know, you talk back to me and I created it. Basically what God's saying. So the most important part we skip down here. Let's go to 19 and 22. It says, out of his mouth go burning lamps and sparks of fire leap out. Out of his nostrils goeth smoke, as out of a seething pot or cauldron. His breath kindleth coals, and a flame goeth out of his mouth. Sounds like a fire-breathing dragon to me, and it's talking about the Leviathan here, talking about the serpent dragon. So you get this comparison again of the serpent and the dragon. So again, when it's talking about serpents, when you understand, even when you take the words back, you know, to Hebrew, Greek, or what have you, it's going to give you serpent. But when you understand what these serpents was called back then, they were referring to them as serpents, the serpent dragons. Interchangeable, same thing, any way you want to look at it. But we can just go straight. Revelations 12, verse 9, it says, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So again, you see it in the Bible, where they're referring to the serpent as a dragon. There's too many references, too many stories around the world that we see where it's talking about dragons. As a matter of fact, we go into Kentucky, where they have the Creation Museum. They have the Creation Museum of Kentucky. It's ran by Christians, but they have a dragon exhibition there, a whole exhibit on dragons. So, you know, clearly the Christians acknowledge the fact that, you know, the Bible's talking about dragons. It's talking about dinosaurs when it's talking about the behemoth. When you read again in Job, it's talking about the behemoth, talking about, you know, these huge dinosaurs. Now, in Job, it's talking about, you know, the tail being like a cedar tree, which is huge. So a lot of people think they're talking about hippopotamus, but it's talking about dinosaurs and a lot of different references in the Bible. And we know they were called dragons. So, you know, you have that whole reference with the serpent dragon. We know, we look at China. We look at the serpent dragon in China and all the mythology that surrounds that. You look at the Chinese zodiac. Everything on that zodiac is real. You have a dragon there as well. So there's no reason for us to believe that that dragon is not real as well, or wasn't real at some point. So we got to look at this stuff. We go down to, you know, look at the Aztecs and the feathered serpent. We talked about how you had this whole, you know, common ancestor between birds, reptilians, and mammals. Well, if you have feathers evolving from scales, the perfect example of that is with the feathered serpent we see down in with the Mayans and the Aztecs down in Mexico. You have Quetzalcoatl when you see the depictions of the feathered serpent. We've seen a feathered serpent in so many different places, giving you that whole connection still as a serpent dragon. Again, in ancient Kemet, you have the whole connection with Wajet Nekbet. You have a serpent and a bird, giving you that connection. The same thing I was talking about before with the brain. And you have, as I said, the Great Pyramid representing the brain, the lower brain, the woman chamber, the queen's chamber in the Great Pyramid, where you have it pointing to Draco, the Draco constellation. Again, serpent, dragon. It's everywhere. Everywhere you look, you see these depictions, you see these comparisons, and them showing serpent dragons. Draco is Latin for draconian, meaning serpent dragon. Even the Greeks have dracontos. Dracontos, which is serpent, giant, sea fish. In ancient mythology, ancient Egyptian mythology, you have Apophis, which, remember, Apophis is the enemy of Ra. You see in many depictions, Apophis is a serpent. Apophis attacking the solar boat, which I think is a reference to them when they astro traveling, them, you know, obviously running into some kind of reptilian interference. You see many depictions of even Set battling, you know, Apophis, and this whole reference to astral travel and, you know, what we would think traveling through space, you know, in the spiritual body, and them having to do battle with serpents or the reptilians. And it's crazy. Remember, in the story, Ra turns into the cat and kills Apophis. And you see in the depiction, Apophis, the serpent, by that tree. You know, all these connections we see is stuff that you got to look at, and you got to understand all this stuff is here to give us this reference that we can't ignore. The ancient Egyptians also talked about dragons in the pyramid text. A lot of people don't know about that. You had Denwen. It says in the pyramid text, Denwen was an Egyptian serpent deity known from the time of the Old Kingdom. The Egyptians shunned him because he posed a threat to all deities. So powerful was his dragon-like abilities. Denwen possessed power over fire, and he could generate a fiery conflagration so powerful that it would destroy even the gods. The dragon attempted this feat, but he failed to slaughter the deities because the spirit of the deceased king thwarted his attack. And we know we have with the Sumerians, the great dragon here. The Babylonians worship Baal and Marduk. And we also have to look at the Nagas, the Naga serpents. To me, we look at the Nagas, they probably would represent, what these beings, this common ancestor could have possibly looked like. Seeing these depictions of these half man, half serpent Nagas, these serpents that's everywhere. We see them worshipped in statues and figurines all over the place. It's something that we got to look at and definitely, put that question in our head, like why half human, half serpent? Is it trying to tell us something? Is it trying to, depict a morphing from them being serpents, to humans? And it's one of the things I always looked at, like if we go back to this evolution, and if we had this common ancestor that was probably, clearly reptilian, is this what it's trying to tell us? Was the evolution process, seen by many as looking this way, as half man, half serpent? We know in Greek mythology, you got the Gorgons. Remember, the Gorgons, same thing, half serpent, half human, or half like man looking. Remember, Medusa, it's a Gorgon. It had, serpent hair. So the mythology, the stories is everywhere. I talked about before about Maria Gambudis. Now, Maria Gambudis is the person who, her research is very important. And she found some of the oldest figurines ever, plain and simple. She talked about the matrilineal society, a society of just women, how women was here first before anybody else. And the figurines she found, a lot of them, when you take a look at them, it almost looks exactly, like what we're talking about here. About, you have this half serpent looking body and the rest is like human, like it's almost as if it's morphing into something. And just like the Egyptian noses was cut off, a lot of people believe that the arms and the heads was cut off on a lot of these figurines to hide, what they probably look like, or to hide the human features. But you can see in a lot of the figurines, it's showing as if, you got the serpent lower half, but it looked like it's starting to split and turn into legs a little bit. But she talked about the whole society of the women who worship these serpent deities. This is from her book. Snakes dwell both in water and in the ground. They hibernate in the earth's body during the winter, and they return in the spring. Further, their periodic molting reinforced their role as symbols of renewal. Snakes were thus thought to bring life in spring. They were also thought to embody deceased ancestors. The classic image of the snake goddess portrays her sitting yoga-like or squatting with snake-shaped limbs. Her head appears either human, snake-like, or masked and perhaps crowned. Snake heads appear with round eyes and a long mouth on vase rims or handles. Horned snake heads were composed in relief on vases. As with the bird goddess, people associated specific symbols with the snake goddess. The snake coil, spiral, zigzag, or wavy lines imitating the snake's movement. Other symbols resemble dotted or diamond bands imitating the snake's skin. The snake's coil often occupies the center position on painted or engraved dishes, votive tablets, or megalithic tombs. Snakes crawl or zigzag of vases' sides or handles from the Neolithic through the Bronze Age and beyond. This depiction, even looks as if, you have snake legs, as if it's separating, as if it was serpent-like at first and it's just separated into legs. It's crazy when you see it.